Maybe it's mine.
Clay Harrold again, back to finish up the ITPDP conference, the coaching conversation conference with Angie Wood here, my career teacher that we've been working with. Thank you for coming back again, Angie.
You're welcome, Clay.
We're going to kind of probe a little bit deeper, talk a little bit about the standards that I really feel that Angie has hit upon, and then some objective questions, reflective questions, interpretive and decisional type questions, the ORAD type questions that I feel are a little bit more based off of the standards, and then taking it a different way and helping and maybe analyzing a little bit more which directions that we would like to go with this class, and then at the end talking quite a deal about what would Angie like to see as my role or an administrator type role moving forward in the future. So again, just to kind of sum up what we observed last week, I observed 11 students, all with IEPs in Angie's Fusion Reading class. Angie, your positives that we have here, you show and have great rapport with all your students, and in turn the students respond to Angie and show her great respect. You can just feel mutual respect in the classroom. I mean, and it goes all the way around with associates and everyone and the students. It's a very positive learning environment to be in. Angie's routine is sound and the transitional times are minimal. Her class did review vocabulary, new vocabulary, and did some whole group reading during the time that I have observed in there. Angie feels the class would benefit with having some sort of a writing component incorporated in the class or an extension to this class later on. The on-task average for the class was 85%, and this is quite high considering that she has a few students that would be classified as probably mental disabled, and many other students with attention type issues. 6 of her 11 students were on task 100% of the time, based on 5 to 10 second class sweeps conducted by myself every 5 minutes for the 45-minute duration that I was in there. So kind of some of the standards that I felt, the Iowa core teaching standards that I thought you really did a good job of hitting that day that I was in there was 1E, creating an environment of mutual respect, rapport, and fairness. I already talked about that. The students, I can tell that there's a mutual respect, there's a great rapport within the class, and the class flows very well because of that. Standard 4C, demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness and adjusting instruction to meet student needs. We talked about that at our last meeting together, that just, I felt that the students, you really do a great job of, feeling where the students were out, not just, day to day, but even during the day, during the middle of the class, making adjustments and being flexible and responsive and going in directions that you need to make sure the students are getting the kind of instruction that they need to be successful. Standard 4F, using available resources, including technologies in the delivery of instruction. We talked about the smart boards that the students use. I witnessed one student looking up information on her tablet in the class, so technology is definitely something that the students engage with, they're used to, they have it at their fingertips all the time, and you do a great job of making sure that it's incorporated in the classroom. Standard 5A, aligning classroom assessment with instructions. We talked before about how you do a great job of questioning, and that's kind of working as kind of a formative type assessment, and getting feedback and instruction, and then guiding your instruction as you move along, and that's outstanding. You mentioned before in our previous post-conference about being able to take vocabulary quizzes and retesting students, having students that have one student in particular used note cards in the future, and that helped their next test score and that type of thing. So being able to base the assessments on what the kids need has really guided your instruction, and that's exactly what we need to see. 6A, creating a learning environment that encourages positive social interaction, active engagement, and self-regulation for every student. I felt personally that the students, we talked about the percentage of time or whatever, but I felt as a whole the students were very, very engaged. And considering this type of format and type of class structure is completely new to these students this year, only being a month into school, a little over a month now, that really, speaks loudly of, your ability to to get them engaged and get them, your structure has helped them be active, and they also self-regulate. I mean, I'm seeing students writing down information, asking questions. I mean, they're very, very conscious of where their abilities lie and what they need to work on, so that's a positive. 6C, develop and implementing classroom procedures and routines that support high expectations for learning. Again, we talked about that with the transition periods, just huge. I mean, the students are obviously, they know the routines, they have them down, they're able to transition quickly, and there's just very, very, very little downtime, if any at all, and that's obviously outstanding. So the purpose of this coaching conversation is, it's more collaborative in nature. We're just kind of going back and forth, talking about ideas and ways that we can, move forward and grow as this program continues to, gain legs and moving into the future. And it's also designed to facilitate ongoing support for Mrs. Wood and the continuing growth of the reading program, like I just said. So with that in mind, we're going to turn kind of to our questioning type period now. Those are the standards that I felt you really hit. And like I said before, there just really wasn't much negative that I felt came out of that. I mean, like we talked a little bit before, there's a few students that are a little off task, but for the most part, I mean, they were all actively engaged. And when a student has a lot of other things in their personal lives that make just learning difficult in general, it's still a positive thing when we can see such growth, and we will see so much growth in the future. So our objective questions, what do you feel students are gaining out of this new course?
Well, they're gaining vocabulary, knowledge of vocabulary, which obviously helps them to become better, more fluid readers. And hopefully over time that will increase their comprehension. They'll understand more of what they're learning, get them back on grade level, or close that gap between them and their peers. And I think ultimately it increases their self-confidence. So.
I know that we, kind of building off that question, we had map test scores last week. I'll be interested to see, do you know when those, when we'll have access to those scores?
I don't know. I would assume here pretty soon, but I'm not for sure.
I wonder if we'll be able to see even any shrinking of that gap that you were talking about, even by the first standardized test that they've done.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see from their scores from last year to this year. There's probably not going to be much growth, but from this year, from map testing, this fall to the following spring, it will be interesting to see how that gap closes between them and their peers.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you observe from students? What are you seeing from them on a day-to-day basis? Are you seeing growth like, when we had a representative from the Fusion, we had a person from the AEA come in and talk about the Fusion program and how the studies claim that it was so good. I mean, are you seeing these types of, broad claims that they're making?
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, the growth that I see is the input the students are putting into the class, what they are physically doing. Once we have our vocabulary word, they hurry up and look it up they don't wait for us to say, okay, what does the prefix mean? What does the suffix mean? They are looking it up on their own, which I see that as growth in and of itself. So, and they're able to put the prefix together with the root, the suffix together with the root, and be able to come up with a definition. So, which is nice.
Did you feel that most of the students had a feel for what those kind of things, did they have some of those skills coming in?
No.
No, they didn't have those skills at all? Okay.
No. They'd come to a word they were reading, if they didn't know it, they just muddle through the word and keep right on going.
Sure.
So,
and they're missing a lot when
Mm-hmm.
as a result of that. You miss words in a sentence, you're probably not going to know what the sentence means.
No,
So.
that comprehension is just way down there. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's very good to hear. Are you enjoying the class setup thus far?
I am. It's a nice group of 11 kids. They all feel comfortable. Well, it seems that they feel comfortable volunteering, answering questions, and even, before class starts, they're in there and they're willing to talk about whatever in their personal lives, which I think that increases their confidence in class. If this person is willing to listen to me about my gripes or about the good things in my life, they're going to listen to my answers to questions. So,
I would agree with that, just because knowing some of those students that are in that group, they don't seem to be the most confident kids in the world anyway. So.
No, and then you see them in the hallways, or I saw one down at the middle school volleyball game last night, goes out of his way to come over and see me and say hi. So, I think that does make a difference, so.
I bet. Well, it's very good to hear. We talked a little bit about this before, just kind of reflecting back a little bit. Not just this lesson, the lesson that I observed, but I've observed 2 of your lessons now. Just overall, do you think there was success in these lessons? I mean, has there been any lessons, I guess, that you walked away thinking, I wish that I would have done this, or that this lesson didn't flow as well as the last one, or has there been any situations like that?
Well, not like that. My wish is always that there's more time. We didn't have enough time to read. Gosh, I wish there was a little bit more time today, that we had more time to read. Yeah. Or when we're talking during the lessons, we're adding, introducing learning strategies to the kids, as well as vocabulary development and reading of the book. Like yesterday, we were talking about the predicting strategy, predicting what you're reading, and then one of the students asked, well, Ken, it was about an ape or a gorilla having a cat as a pet, and would that really happen? Or teaching the gorilla sign language, and then the class got off onto another discussion, and do you think that's real? Could that really happen? And we talked about, okay, that would be a strategy, that you'd be self-talking yourself to that. Well, is this real? So we got online and YouTube did it. It was an actual story. We saw the gorilla, Coco, and the cat named Alba, and the kids did a wonderful job. So my wish is that we just had block scheduling. If we had this class for an hour and a half every day, it would just be fantastic. So makes me wonder how the kids' scores would change. I think that they would drastically rise if they had an hour and a half every day.
This is kind of a little bit off the subject, but it's kind of a reflective type question as well. You're not the first person that I've heard say, block scheduling would really help here. What do you think the general consensus? I mean, because I know, like you mentioned, the volleyball game last night that's at a neighboring district of ours. I know they have block scheduling, and just hear, just the praises of block scheduling. I mean, do you think there would be others, even just our building, that would feel that we could benefit from?
I am actually anti-block scheduling, because my students, it seems like students with learning disabilities, you can only engage their attention for so long. But in this class, it's shown me that maybe I had some misconceptions about block scheduling and the attention level of my students. If they're interested in it, man, you have their attention the whole entire time. So I think, out of an hour and a half, I think we would keep their attention most of the time. But those other classes, the lecture type classes, or the classes that they sit in and they struggle, so then their mind starts to wander, I just really worry about them in those kinds of classes. So
it's interesting that you mentioned misconceptions, because I'm sure there was probably some misconception about this program just in general, not only just, apprehension on a teacher's part, maybe this is a whole new course, I'm not really that sure, but even, the students, and then probably some of their parents, feeling that, oh wow, my kid's maybe being singled out a little bit and doing this.
Yeah.
I was talking to one of the middle school teachers that is also incorporating a branch of the Fusion program at their level, and they were making the comment the other day that a particular set of parents is quite against their student being engaged in a class like this, and that's just too bad to, but with any time there's, misconceptions, sometimes it is just a matter of, the research shows that this is the best, and this is the best way we can improve student scores, and, trying to move forward in that direction.
And I think parents, they want their child to be like everybody else. My child's in 9th grade, I want my child with all the 9th graders doing all the 9th grade work, instead of building those skills so that they can perform in 10th grade or 11th grade. So we'll sit back and do reading, and not, in a different reading class. So get those skills up so they can be like them. They want their kids like everybody else. So if the kids feel that way, it's obvious their parents would feel that way.
Good question. So just kind of building off of what I was just talking about with teachers and block scheduling, and then the middle school corrective reading, do you think there'd be benefit in educating the rest of our staff on some of the techniques that your program is using?
Oh, definitely. They use vocabulary, even in math class, the class of numbers, they use vocabulary. If the teachers could learn how to break that vocabulary down into the same language that we use, I think that would be something that the kids understand. They would feel more comfortable, more like their peers. Oh, I know what this person's talking about. So yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay. So just kind of noting some of that, just maybe even taking some of the taking away from some of the vocab strategies that could be beneficial to others too.
Or even in the fact that the kids deal so well with consistency, knowing what to expect every day when they come into our classroom. They know what to expect for that full 45 minutes. When they go into, let's say, Mr. Jones's math class, gee, I wonder what we're going to do today. Or they walk up to a teacher. I notice this when you walk up to a teacher when they're gone. When they return, they'll say, did we do anything yesterday? You know, I think, well, surely they did something, but when they're gone in our class, they know what they missed. They know the word that they have to ask about, what word did I miss?
Right.
So, and it's the kids know. So I think even knowing about the consistency would be good for the other teachers.
Wonderful. All right, moving on. We're going to skip down a couple. We talked the other day, we kind of talked about interpretive type questions now. So what, kind of brainstorming some ideas to go back and forth here. We listed the other day that, you question, read journals, review, vocabulary quizzes to seek feedback. Do you think there's any other ways, either formal or informal, maybe things you've done in the past, moving forward, as an evaluator, just trying to get more consistent, like you said, consistency amongst the staff, but even being able to take, this person uses this strategy, because sometimes I think teachers get isolated and they get on their own kind of islands and they get so used to doing, some methods and strategies that work for them, just trying to get more of a collaborative type of list. Is there anything you used in your past, it could be either formal or informal, just to, besides maybe just questioning to kind of see where a student's at off the top of your head?
Well, I think the key is getting to know the students and see what they have in their heads, know what they're capable of. Sometimes my impression of a student is one thing. One student in particular this year, this has never happened in my 21 years of teaching. I had a totally different perception of this kid. I thought this student was lazy. And then after getting to know him and talking to him, he has a mental disability. So, and then once you kind of change that mindset, you understand why he does some of the things that he does and why he performs the way he does.
Okay.
So it's just getting to know the student, making time for the students is the big key, I think. So.
Kind of summing up what I said, because it wasn't a very good question.
I'm sorry,
that was a good answer. Do you think, I'm thinking like a formal strategy, do you think, outside of just a quiz, do you think a student could even present in maybe a different way, some of the vocabulary terms that they know? Could you incorporate, a project-based type thing? Or could you, I don't know, is there any other ways you think you could kind of assess some of your students?
Oh, well, you could relate it to everyday living, how they would use it in their everyday life.
Okay.
A lot of our vocabulary words are words that they would use in their everyday life. The word I can think of that we just had yesterday was belligerent.
Okay.
Even if you could use belligerent twice a day in a conversation, or twice a day in conversations that you have. Right. Even if they're able to use those words and then come back and then tell us, how did you use those words? What kind of response did you get when you used that word? So.
And that's, kind of going off of what you said, kind of tying both those together, knowing your students, you're going to be able to incorporate that, being able to have a conversation with them, and then maybe incorporate some of those words into their everyday conversations. Yeah. So that's a good way of doing that.
I think it would, their parents would know what they're working on at school too. I think their parents would be interested to hear some of those words.
Sure.
So.
That's great. That's a very good idea. As a result of the feedback items, as the results come in, and that could be, some of their weekly vocab quizzes. It could be like their map tests, score ranges, that type of thing. How might you change, strengthen, alter your planning and or just instruction in the future, kind of based on some of the results? I mean, ideally, we see a huge gain, and there's no reason to really alter it a whole lot, because this, what the studies show and what we're doing based on those studies has worked. If there's something maybe that we see, okay, that they're lacking a skill in a particular area, how do you think, how might we go about changing some thoughts?
Well, I have a couple students in particular that work a little slow. write, takes them quite a bit more time to write.
Mhm.
So our class, we work together, so, like for instance, at the beginning of the class, we'll ask them, about a vocabulary word, and then we give the sentence that it was used in, and then write